I don't remember. Gosh, before I introduce myself, this room is it's like standing room only. So if people don't think that our community cares about education, they're 100% wrong. So you all showed up this morning, and for that, I am grateful. So good morning to all of you. I'm Katie Kirkpatrick, President and CEO of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and pleased to be with you all here for the 9th annual State of Education, which means next year will be 10. So Ken and the executive committee, we're going to have to think ahead on that one just to see, although we love having share in the space. What? Omelet bar. Oh, omelet bar is what you're going to step it up that way. But on behalf of the Learn for Life Executive Committee, thank you for being here. If you're on the executive committee, please raise your hands. So you are, anyone else around? There we go. There's one right here. And then I also want to say to our corporate partners that help fund Learn for Life, we're extremely grateful for that continued support. If you are supporting Learn for Life, we encourage you to do that as well. Please reach out to one of us. And you know, many of you may not know, but Learn for Life originated right here at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. In terms of the idea, the seed did. But it took the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Atlanta Regional Commission, the Community Foundation, and United Way coming together to leverage what this could be. Hiring Ken Zepp, which I think was one of the best things we ever did. It hired a smart, efficient, professional team, and that really allows Learn for Life to do the mission that they have been formed to do, which is understand the state of education, find the bright spots in the system, whether it's pre-K all the way up through our higher education system, and replicate that across the community. So we're here today to get an update on where we are in the process, but also to highlight some bright spots, but also to hear from some of our leaders, and I'm thankful we're here today. I do want to recognize, I think we have teachers in the room who are the ones that make everything happen in the classroom. Do we have these students as well? So I just want to say thank you to all of you. And look, education is not just a school issue. The Metro Atlanta Chamber is an economic development business. This is an economic competitiveness issue. So it's not only about the workers that are employed at the companies here, their ability to go to work every day knowing their children are getting an excellent education, but it's also preparing our future workforce to fill the roles for the future. So I want to say thank you to all of you for caring. Thank you for being here this morning. You're in for a treat. And with that, I am going to introduce the gentleman that needs no introduction, and that is Ken Zepp, the Executive Director for Learn for Life.
So the committee's great, and Kramer was sick today. Sorry. We should all have Kramer's help. This is because of the leadership of Anna Roach at the Atlanta Regional Commission, Frank Fernandez from Community Foundation, Katie here from the Chamber, and Milton Widow to be with us from United Way. You guys, your vision is why we're here. I call this the Maria Supporter Shop. Where's Maria Support? This is your opportunity to see how the support report gets made. Thank you for your leadership. We wouldn't be here without you all coming together. And our leadership council members, I see scattered around the room. I see Jima, I see George. Can the leadership council members raise their hand? Dana, yes, thank you all for your leadership. That's a student every day. It is energizing to be in this room. Am I too loud? Is this, no? It's not, I don't know if you hear that. I'm enjoying it. So thank you for being in this room and for it's energizing to be with you all. Before we dive in, I do want to set a little bit of context for where we are as a community. So thanks to the Atlanta Regional Commission, they do this Metro Speaks survey every 10 years. And they asked 10 years ago, or they do it every year. They started 10 years ago. And they asked the question in 2016, is education our region's top issue? 12% of the folks said yes 10 years ago. Anyone know what the number might be when they asked the question this year? 3%. I know, right? You're looking around, you're like, some people in this room. Then NBC did a poll about is a college degree worthwhile? 53% in 2016 said yes. Last year, 33%. Taken together, these two data points point to a community that doesn't recognize the value and the opportunity that education provides. But folks in this room know something different. So if you, as we know, we can look at this in a bunch of different metrics. But from your personal economic standpoint, your pathway to a better life, your pathway to personal fulfillment and economic prosperity is through education. It's just through education. The more education, the further along you get in your education journey, the more economic income you get, and your better chance to stay employed. And this is kind of what the purpose of Learn for Life is. We are here to find the things that are right. Me and Brittany sing often go through this.
Use that hand held.
Special pivot right there. It's this is the moment that Learn for Life was born for. This idea of finding things that are working, bringing folks together, scaling those bright spots, that demonstrates that education can work for kids. It can be that transformative intervention. It can alter the trajectory of kids to create a better life for themselves. And we're fortunate that we've been able to find those bright spots. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit more about today. But to understand our community and to find those bright spots, we got to know who we are. And this is a look at who Metro Atlanta is. And we look at the 5-county region, the 5 school systems, and the 5 county systems, and 3 city systems inside of that. And look at, as you see, 80% of our kids identify as kids of color. About 2/3 of our kids come from under-resourced homes. So we need to be clear-eyed about the fact that we're working with kids who come from under-resourced backgrounds, historically underserved. If we don't know who we're serving, we can't be effective. And then we also need to be clear-eyed about where we are. This is the pencil chart we show repeatedly. And you see we're making a little bit of gains in math. But at the end of the day, we're still not preparing enough kids to be successful on their journey. And we have to be thoughtful that these numbers represent systems. They don't represent kids. And so our kids are creative, resourceful, and whole. These are systems of adults, systems that kids were born into that are causing these results. It just shows the opportunity ahead of us. Now, there's a lot of detail that we're not going to go into right now that's in that report that you have in front of you that breaks this out and you get a sense of what the different levers are, what the different opportunities are. We're not going to go through all of that, but you're going to hear a lot more detail as we move through today's conversation. That report is yours to keep, by the way. And if you, for those of you online, thank you for joining online. On our website, we'll also be in the follow-up email. I see you on Facebook. As I said, it all comes down to the bright spots. This is the business that we're in. Finding those strategies of having uncommon success for kids. And the good news is they're out there. They are out there. And we're thankful that many of them are in this room right now. If your logo's out there, if you're bright side, can you raise your hand? Thank you. Every time you look at that, and if you get a chance to meet them before they have tables out in front floor, they'll be there afterwards. Get a chance, and there's more detail in your annual report. You hear from a few of them as we go. Now, in a few cases, we've been able to take these to regional scaling initiatives. So College Bound, the Glen Vision Project, Literacy Dust for All, we're taking these bright spots, and we're saturating the region. We're really getting as many kids as possible exposed to those interventions. We're really excited about that continued maturation. So there are a few key themes that we're going to be talking about today as we assemble this series of powerhouse panels. They're going to be rapid fire, but you're going to get a really good insight into some of the challenges we're facing. Our literacy priorities are solved, but we know that if we build an ecosystem of support, not just in the schoolhouse, but around the schoolhouse, we can see differences. Kids don't see the value in post-secondary education, but we know if we make a compelling ROI, kids will show up, kids will complete. And finally, we got to get student voice engaged. None of this can happen without engaged students and engaged teachers being a part of the conversation, not just being a preceding it. And so what we've structured very carefully, and I'm thankful to my team for pulling this together, we're going to dive into each one of these from the practitioner point of view, from the system level leader point of view, to really get a deep understanding of what the opportunity is. And it wouldn't be a Learn for Life event. We're going to talk about the circle of blame, which we're trying desperately to turn into a circle of accountability. Everybody here is on this chart somewhere. You're a business community, you're a business partner, we're thankful for your engagement, and you're wondering, where are my employees? Where are my customers? Well, colleges are trying to you point to college and say, why aren't you generating them? Say, well, kids are coming in, we're getting ninth grade, or we're getting kids coming in our freshman year, half need remediation. How would you expect us to generate college graduates that are prepared? You go out to college says, well, it wasn't my fault. High school brought us kids that weren't prepared. High school says kids were coming in ninth grade. They were 3-4 years behind in literacy. How did you expect us to get there? And they say, well, where was preschool? Well, preschool looks back to the business community and says, why did you fund preschool? And around we go. And until we collectively decide to stop pointing to the other folks and start looking at ourselves, we're going to be in this spin cycle. Hopefully, I think today you'll see there are bright spots, there are opportunities for us to get better, and we're excited that this room is full of folks that want to engage that work. So, with that, let me introduce folks that everybody knows. Everyone knows Rebecca Marshall, Dr. Rebecca Marshall, who's been leading our thing. You know me well. I built a career taking credit for other people. And we're thank you for that. It's exciting to be. Rebecca did this for a very long time, effortlessly, graciously, thoughtfully. And so I turn the microphone over with much appreciation.
Thanks, Patty. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you. I say this is our Super Bowl, even though I don't know this works. So we're just thrilled that you're here. Hi to our friends on Zoom. We're going to break this into 3 sections today, and in true life fashion, we have 3 panels, so it's going to be quick. And we're going to toggle back and forth between some data and some stories. So the important thing today is that as we look at this aggregated data, regional data, that you also stop and think about who's a child in your life that this applies to. So this could be a current student, a former student, maybe it was you in school struggling to learn how to read, right? Like stop and think about who is the child that brought you here today. And as you have that child's face in your mind, maybe it's many. I'm a former high school teacher. I can think of a lot of children who are now very much adults. Keep that face in your mind as we look at data. Okay, we're going to get started. I'll be talking through all about literacy today, and then we'll transition into post-secondary and student engagement. So let's start with literacy. And show the pencil chart of the 6 key outcomes that are we can measures to know how we're doing from the cradle to the career. In early literacy, we see that equity gaps persist across race and class. This is no surprise to anyone in the room. There's even more data in the report that's at your chair. But we think this is important to call out, especially because, as Ken mentioned earlier, this is not an indictment on kids. Kids are not deficit. This is a call to action for us as adults to build systems to ensure this no longer happens. So that's our disaggregated data for the region. Here's how we're doing over time. We saw our strongest year in 2019, still at only 44% proficient on English language arts. This is aggregated across all students, right? And then we dipped a few points coming back from the pandemic. And this last year, quite honestly, we have to be clear-eyed about our data. We dropped a few points, and that's surprising because so many districts are focused on the science of reading right now. And so we're going to dig into why that might be on our panel. All right, here's a little bit of hope. Learn for Life coalesces around what's working. So there are some bright spots in these areas. And we're going to talk about just two of them with you today. Again, you can talk with many more out at the tables, read more in your reports. But in the factor of teacher preparation, we know that it's important to train all adults in the science of reading. So 5 years ago, Learn for Life, along with our partners at the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy and their free online Cox campus, and our partners at United Way and the Whitehead Foundation, began work with several school districts along with birth through 5 education centers to ensure that those adults in the buildings were trained in the science of reading. Raise your hand if you've taken a Cox campus course. It's probably almost half the room. Yeah. They are free. They always will be free. And that work that started in Marietta 5 years ago has seen incredible results. We know that systems are complex. It takes a lot to transform these systems, but we're seeing success. So over these last several years, Marietta City Schools has seen an 11-point overall average increase in their 3rd through 8th grade English language arts scores. And we see, there are little variations between grade levels, between years, but on average, they're growing incredibly. So this work is possible. There is hope, right? We're not here just to show negative data. We're also here to show what is possible. We've taken that work with classroom educators to make sure the people who support classroom educators also have what they need to support children's language and literacy development. So if you or an organization that you partner with has staff or volunteers who support children in language and literacy, maybe in a tutoring setting or an after-school setting, we've partnered with Kennesaw State University to take the online Cox campus courses and convert them into micro-credentials, which is really exciting. So these micro-credentials allow folks to, and Malcolm Mitchell is featured in our very first video. How many of you have seen that one? Yeah, hey, okay, it's 20 minutes long. It gives you exactly what you need to go read in a classroom. We're in process right now of building out more micro-credentials at the tutor level. So think 2 to 4 hours for folks who need a little bit more, but they're not classroom educators, so they don't need 20 hours. They don't need 200 hours of training. So that work is underway. There are QR codes to scan. These will always be free micro-credentials. And so they're in your annual report if you're interested. That's one bright spot. Another bright spot is around the factor of physical health. Children's vision is essential. If children cannot, or if they have uncorrected vision challenges, they cannot learn to read. It should be the first step before we invest in the very expensive and long-term cultural overhaul of teaching adults the science of reading. We need to make sure kids have glasses, right? Yeah, thank you. And so, a few things. We have our partners here, our Bright Spot, Vision to Learn. Where's Pete? Pete, talk to Pete afterwards if you'd like to learn more in depth about this. But we know that beyond academic outcomes, vision is highly correlated with other life outcomes for children, including their mental health and their involvement in the criminal justice system, right? So this is a solvable problem. It is relatively cheap. It costs about $175 per kid to put glasses on their face, and that includes this 3-step process. So it's really important if you leave one thing around vision knowing, screenings in and of themselves are not enough, right? We cannot just screen. We also have to then go back and for the kids who failed the screening, provide a free exam and bring back free glasses, which they pick up the frames for, so they're invested and they want to wear them, right? The Atlanta Vision Project is going to serve about 47,000 kids with free glasses over the next 3 years. There is a way for you to get involved. Yes. Anything like not solicit individual donations, but we have a tax credit set up. So it's not a donation. You can get dollar for dollar return. If you contribute to the tax credit this year, when you file your taxes next year, you'll get that exact amount of money back on your return. Yes, Paige, talk to Paige if you have questions on this. There's also a flyer in your seat for how to learn and how to get involved in that. This 47,000 will screen actually 165,000 kids across the metro districts at 270 elementary schools over the next 3 years. So again, there are solutions. These things are possible, and no one solution is the single answer, right? Glasses alone are not going to teach children to read, but it is a critical first step. So these are a few of the things. I am excited now to bring up to the stage. We have 3 panelists. You can start coming on up. We're going to have a conversation about literacy. First, Juliana Cagle. She is the president of the Boys Weta Foundation. Dr. Douglas Hendricks, Senior Deputy Superintendent and Chief of Staff at Clayton. And Malcolm Mitchell, who I learned was a football champion. And go Dogs. Go Dogs. But I'm not supposed to say go Patriots here, so there's
I can leave that to me. I'll get my research.
These 3 folks are fierce advocates for literacy. They are walking the walk. They are here to talk to you about that walk. And we're really excited to be in conversation. So Malcolm, we're going to start with you. Tell us about your personal story. You can leave the football out if you like. But talk to us about your journey with literacy.
At the risk of getting everyone here to dislike me, I'll leave the football part. I'll just say go Dogs and leave it at that. Okay, there is a football quote that I'll share. There's an individual by the name of Jerry Rice, who's considered to be one of the greatest football players of all time. He has a quote. The quote is, "I will do today what others won't, so tomorrow I can do what others can't." And I want to recognize all of you for being here today, representing that quote by Jerry Rice to the highest degree. There's also another quote by Sir Isaac Newton. "I have seen further, it's by standing on the backs of giants." I have a few giants in the room that I'd like to point out. First, the members of this panel. Ken, my dear friend Betsy Vernon, who's on a high now that I've said her name out loud. But similar to Ken, I too take credit for others' work. And I have 2 members of my team in here, Robin Giddens Hart, Wesley Wooten, that I like to point out from Sugarcane Foundation. Here's my quick story. I was born in Valdosta, Georgia, and I was born in the conditions of every negative literacy statistic that's ever been taken. We did not have age-appropriate books at home. We lived below the poverty line. My father was not around. Everything that causes a child to suffer from illiteracy, I had that experience. Thankfully, I was gifted the ability to play sports, and that brought me more time. That will not happen for every child. It will not happen for the majority of the children. But with that time, I was able to conclude that football was not the most important thing in the world, even though it's celebrated 100 times more than educational outcomes. Thankfully, I was able to conclude that reading was the most self-empowering tool an individual could possess. So I set out to be a better reader while I was playing sports. That led to me becoming a picture book author and establishing Share the Magic Foundation. Share the Magic Foundation's mission is to inspire kids to read. We do that through in-school programs and creating digital resources for educators to engage students in literacy-based activities. We serve all 50 states. Obviously, I have a deep love for Georgia and Atlanta. We also serve 18 other countries. Why am I here? Why do I do this work? Because I know what the outcome will be for kids who suffer from illness. How do I know? Saw it every single day of my life as a child. But I also know what the other side of that looks like through my experiences. I do not sit here as a football player. I sit here as a person, found a love for reading, exercise the activity. That's what has brought me here.
Thank you, Malcolm. Dr. Hendricks, turning to you, schools are really complex places and you've had a long career in education. Can you help frame some of the challenges that you've experienced as an educator, both in school buildings and at the district level?
Absolutely. Love to. But first off, may I recognize that our superintendent from Lake County Public Schools out there, Dr. Smith, they've been doing some others, and the reason why I recognize them because it focuses on district support for our local state district. But there are challenges, and the challenges have been presented in the data. My good friend Malcolm just told you about the challenges that seem the same. Okay. And so let's just start the gap start early in Clayton County Public Schools. There are issues with vocabulary. There are issues with students having print media in place. And those issues continue throughout their school journey. There's a lot of instability and a lot of movement for our students within our district. We have one of the highest turn rate students moving of anywhere in the state, not just in the metro area. Then you think about this, and I experienced this as a kid. Now, I thought you were talking about my life. So you move 2, 3, 4 times. Think about what happens to you as you try to adapt to your school, right? You go into a school, and even if it's the same district, there are different learning expectations. There are different pacings. And you still have the responsibility of making friends because that's important to kids. That's why we have such a hard time with children having the virtual learning situations, right? Then you get to the point of understanding that there are a whole bunch of student needs that exist now, some that we didn't even have to deal with, right? You start to think about the fact that there are all the mental health challenges. There's still poverty. There's still just trauma itself. And you say, wow, it's really tough to be a child in Clayton County and other places like Clayton County. And then you think, well, okay, we're going to put the science of reading in place. It's going to change everything. But it's not that easy, right? Because now we're telling teachers who have adapted to a certain way of doing things that we're going to do it this way. And you still have to fight the fact that people are still believing that there should be this creativity piece, which there should be. But for an organization to be an organization, you have to share in purpose, right? And so we've made our purpose literacy, but that doesn't make the science of reading implementation easy. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes coaching. And then finally, and you've said it so eloquently many times, that teaching literacy cannot just happen in the schools. It's a shared endeavor. And what we find in Clayton County is there are many homes that don't have books, right? There are many homes where adults are not reading aloud to children. And there are many situations where there's no consistency or routine. You put all of that together, you see what the struggle is, not just in Clayton County, but everywhere. And the data proves that. But we are convinced with the work that we're doing, I'm sure we'll talk about that later, that we're going to replace hope with certainty, right? And we're going to make sure that the majority of our children can read, because we understand that when children can read, that's the foundation for in every lesson.
Thank you for laying out some of the challenges. We're not going to leave you just at challenges. I know you all are moral voices on this issue. And so we're going to be, again, clear-eyed about the challenges and get to some of the solutions. So Juliana, talk to us from the foundation perspective, why literacy is a priority for you at the Boys Water Foundation.
Can you all hear me? Well, first and foremost, thank you all so much to Learn for Life, to you and to Ken and your team for hosting today. I think it's just wonderful to see our community come out and be here together this morning. So the Guizweta Foundation, you all may know that Roberto C. Guizweta was the CEO of the Coca-Cola Company. He was a Cuban immigrant. And so we have a long-standing history of investing in immigrant and refugee causes, Hispanic Latino causes, and in education outcomes in general, because Roberto C. Guizweta really believed in the power of education to transform lives. And that is our guiding principle of the foundation, is to invest in organizations and programs that are doing that important work across our city today. About, I guess, 15 years ago or so, the foundation identified STEAM and innovation as a priority. So we did a lot of investing across the region in STEAM and innovation causes and initiatives. And then, of course, coming out of the pandemic, the world changed, and we were undergoing a strategic plan refresh process in 2023. This was coming out of the pandemic. We've had a lot more data around where is the significant need, what is going to drive student outcomes. And as we kept looking across the ecosystem of who was measuring those bright spots, who was measuring the work that was being done and the outcomes, we kept hearing Learn for Life saying over and over and over again, which led the foundation in 2023 to really align its strategic priorities and metrics for programmatic impact actually with Learn for Life. And so every grant that the foundation is investing in since 2023, and at least over the next 6 years, if not beyond, is really aligning to one of those 5 main metrics, which are, and I say this all the time, so I feel like I could work for Learn for Life practically, but it is kindergarten readiness or early language and literacy, 3rd grade literacy, 8th grade math, college and career readiness, and economic mobility and workforce development. And so if a partner is doing work that is touching one of those components, then chances are that we have at least spoken to those organizations doing that work across the city. So coming back to literacy, though, the foundation has also had a long-standing history in investing in early childhood education. But when we were doing the strategic plan refresh work, we really wanted to think more deeply about literacy as that driving outcome. And so really that was kind of our kickstarting point. We knew that there was already great work happening in Marietta City Schools with the Literacy and Justice for All initiative. We have heavily invested in the Cox campus and in the work that is taking place with Talk With Me Baby that started at Grady. It's now being expanded into all kind of metro region birthing hospitals. And so the foundation really is leaning heavily into literacy, and not just literacy based off of kind of light touch programmatic work, but really thinking about what are those bright spots? What is moving the needle forward on education and student outcomes? What's going to take that 38% to higher? And we are real about that. This is not just talk. We really are wanting to award dollars that are touching those metrics in a real deep meaning.
Yeah. We're really grateful to the Guizweta Foundation for helping to align our region and all growing in the same direction. It's a phrase we've been talking about, is let's align on a few key outcomes and really do them well. So thank you for that example. Dr. Hendricks, you laid out some of the challenges. Talk to us now about some of the strategies that you are seeing beginning to work.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with our partnership with Learn for Life. Robinson. We make the decision, and it's an intuitive decision in our opinion, that we're going to focus heavily in the early grades on literacy. And so our superintendent had a vision of an early learning center where we not only capture pre-K students, but we capture pre-KK students, 3rd grades, right? We're also working with the entities throughout the community who also take in these children to improve their teachers and their ability to provide this kind of instruction. But our work with K1 has focused basically on those foundational skills, the science of reading. We've kind of pushed some of the other courses back. Not that we're not doing them, but we're infusing literacy in our science education and our science social studies education experiences. We're adding in executive functioning, because if you look at the research on executive functioning, and children who can comport themselves and who can organize themselves have a better chance in school. We're making sure that every teacher at the K1 level is a certified teacher without exception. We do training with our coaches, with our school administrators, and even our district personnel in the science of reading. And the district commitment that we have is extraordinary. We're going out into the community because it can. This work cannot be done without the community. We're doing the micro credentialing. We're about to take that everywhere with KSU. We want every parent or as many parents, as many people as possible to be micro credentialed because everybody must be reading to a child because we understand that it's important language. That is the foundation for all of the learning. And so we have to talk to children. We have to read to children. We do our Let's Talk Literacy, where we're talking to parents about why literacy is important, what they can do to help their children. We bring in experts like my good friend, Mr. Comer Gates. And so the full gamut of work is happening, but we also are needing resources. And so we are seeking other partners to come in and help us, but we know consistency, time, coaching, one focus is what will deliver us totally. We envision a day very soon where every child in Clayton County is reading by the first grade. And when we do that, we will see all other subjects increase. We will see empathy increase. We will see kindness increase. We will see the ability to critically think increase. And then we will see a community change for the better. And we'll see children come out of Clayton County who are now solving the issues with cancer. They're creating a safer world for people because they understand that diplomacy fits better than war. But all of these things happen when we take literacy serious and we start at the lowest levels. And so when you come to Clayton County and you ask us what we're doing first, we're taking literacy serious and we're doing it at the very early levels. And thank you for our partners. And we ask that anybody who's interested in this work, any teachers, I'm going to take a selfish plug here for my superintendent real quick. If you want to have a great teaching experience and you want to teach children to read and want to change their
The critical component of literacy. Y'all, we're not just talking about test scores on math scores, right? Literacy is the foundation for a life of self-determination. It builds empathy. Reading a book allows you to walk in someone else's shoes and understand their perspective. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Malcolm, you've been a community leader.
Follow that.
You've been a community leader in this space for quite some time, Malcolm. Talk to us about what folks in the room can do if they're not currently in the classroom. Like, what is something that everyone can take away and practice or apply after today's conversation around literacy?
I'll answer that question, but let me first say Metro Atlanta it is having some things. We are seeing students in 8th grade come out of 8th grade reading at higher proficiency levels than, let's say, several years ago. And we're seeing roughly around 10% given in some areas. But I put everything to football. So 10% to me means 10 yards. If you know anything about football, 10 yards gets you a first down. If you know anything more about football, you understand the accumulation of first downs gets you closer to the end zone. And if you get closer to the end zone, you increase your chances of scoring a game. Boy, everybody come together. That's great. Gains are important to acknowledge. But we understand that one first down is enough. That we need to score a touchdown. We need to identify what scoring a touchdown actually means. And the ambitious side of me says 100%. And I will go after that. I will live with that goal in mind every single day. But we know the goal isn't 34%. We know the goal isn't less than 50%. So let's establish that goal and go after it. Here's what I've learned through all of my work in this space over the last 10 years. No one wants to face the consequences for negative literacy outcomes. Just period. Because those consequences are life trapped in a cycle of poverty. Just bad outcomes, and no one wants that. So what must we do? Well, as it has already been stated, there are many different perspectives and angles that we can take. Obviously, teacher training is essential, implementing the science of reading and evidence-based literacy practices. All of that is essential, but there's another piece that I like to focus on, which is the student engagement aspect of things, because you can create this incredible play as coaches. But if you throw that ball and the person doesn't want to catch it, doesn't know to put their hands up, doesn't know how to make the play, well, great job, but you really haven't empowered them to do anything except be embarrassed by still failing to accomplish something you want them to have. So what the Share the Magic Foundation focus on? Student engagement. And we focus on shifting the cultural narrative and respect for literacy in these communities because we need them to understand the value of the resource to the degree in which they're willing to engage because they understand how this is going to get them closer to their desired outcome. What can you do? You can pretend to care, but you cannot pretend to show up. My advice for all of us will be to continue to join as a single unit in this effort, understanding our roles and responsibilities on this giant team. But more than anything else, we have to show up in the communities. Not just talk about what the community needs, but go to the schools, go to the libraries, be a part of the community. Because you showing up is the greatest value add that you can offer. And that's what I try to talk to my team about at Share the Magic Foundation. We will be present wherever we're needed to ensure that kids and communities get the message and it connects in a way that they can culturally understand.
Well, that's a word for today. Show up. Find work that I can do. And Juliana, what do you want to leave folks with?
Well, and I don't know how to follow Malcolm in that. I would just say I want to leave on that note right back there, which is that you've heard it from us and seen the data around literacy could be the single factor that changes a student's life for forever. It touches every other potential issue area. It is the way that we like to think about it. It is the stone that creates the ripple effects across a student's life. And so I'm a mom of 4 kids. I'm a big believer that it does take a village to raise a child. We are the village. These are the people in the village. The Boys Foundation is honored to partner with so many in this room to do the work and to be part of the village in their own kind of unique way. But focusing inside of our own homes, but recognizing that it does take all of us to actually create the ripple effects and the change. And so again, we're just honored to try to invest in the ripples and into kind of the deep reading brain across the city.
Very quickly, literacy is like oxygen. You don't know how important it is until you don't have it. It creates empathy, but it takes empathy to educate children. We know that empathy is the highest form of intelligence. And you can step out of yourself and your situation and step into somebody else's situation and see that situation for yourself and have feelings that make you want to make it better for other people. Now, I have a problem. When I see other people's children, I have 2 children. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I have a problem because I can't help but see my children's face and those children's bodies. And I see the things that those children go through, and I wonder why or what that life might be if that was my child. And so I'm stuck with that problem. I'll probably be stuck with that problem for the remainder of my life. And although it is a problem, it's a good problem to have. But because it keeps my compass focused towards helping children. And so we all have to engage. I think everybody said it. It will take us all. And it will take us all understanding that no child is insignificant. No child is too different. No family is too poor. No people are too insignificant. And I think when we get to that point collectively and we start to stand up for each other and we make literacy a priority everywhere, and even if we don't have children, we serve as mentors and we go in spaces, even spaces that are different from the spaces that we inhabit. And we find ourselves creating this ecosystem of people who care and who do things for the right reason, especially for the children. We'll find that we create a better world. For me and for my team that's here today, our superintendent, this is not just an endeavor for taking kind of students. This is about improving the world. And so we ask that everybody be committed. This is not a spectator sport. Everybody has to get in. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah, we're all in for spectator sport. We're now going to transition to talk about post-secondary, and I'm excited to bring up Tanisha Winston from our team. How many of you have been to a Change Action Network meeting at Learn for Life? More than half the room. Tanisha leads this work, so if you have been there, it's because of her brilliance. And so we're excited to transition. Keep literacy in mind as we talk about our next two topics, because everything is interrelated and literacy is the foundation. Thanks so much, Rebecca. So I'm going to take you to the other end of the pencil chart. And as we dive into post-secondary success, I just want to take a moment to uplift Learn for Life's bright spots for working in the factors you see highlighted in blue, because we know that post-secondary success requires us to focus on many different things. So thank you to One Goal, the Scholarship Academy, and CAC. And when we talk about post-secondary success, it's not just about a personal achievement. It is really about fueling our state's economy as well as meeting our future workforce demand. I want you all to consider that by 2031, 85% of the jobs that we consider good jobs are going to require some form of post-secondary education. And again, it's not just about meeting our workforce demands. Individuals have a lot to gain as well. Recent University System of Georgia graduates are poised to earn $1.4 million more in their lifetime than students just with a high school diploma. And lastly, it's really great for moving our region and our state economically, because each of those post-secondary grads contributes on average about $2 million to our GDP. So the problem is by 2032, the number of retirees who are exiting the workforce are going to outpace the number of new entrants with post-secondary education, and that's going to leave us with a 4.5 million skilled worker gap. So that's for jobs in accounting, nursing, medical fields, and more. And you saw this slide earlier when Ken presented, and so I'm excited to take one more look at it for that individual economical gain. So as your education attainment increases, your chance of unemployment decreases. And also, folks with a bachelor's degree, on average, earn $32,000 more a year than those with a high school diploma. Yet, while our enrollment rates remain fairly high at 68% in the metro area, far fewer students are actually crossing that finish line because they experience barriers. They're enrolling because they do truly, and they cite that they believe that their institutions are going to deliver on that promise of job and career prosperity. They run into these barriers such as cost, emotional stress, and mental health. And some of those, if you dive deeper into that emotional stress piece, they feel lonely or isolated. They experience really heavy coursework load. And also the sheer cost of their financial institution starts to weigh on them. And so now that we've just talked about really some of the benefits, but also the barriers of getting students across that finish line, I'm really excited to bring up our next panel who's going to be able to talk about how we can actually implement strategies to get students through that finish line, and also why it matters. So panelists, I'm going to invite y'all to join me now. So we have Dr. George Lewis, president of Clayton State University, who brings 30 years of higher education leadership across admission, diversity, and two college presidents. And we have Taylor Ramsey, executive director of One Goal, one of our bright spots,
who has nearly 20 years of educational equity leadership and is a first-gen college student herself. So she really is passionate about those 1,500 students that she's bringing across the post-secondary finish line. And then lastly, is a Georgia native and currently enrolled at Emory's really prestigious nursing program, and also served on Learn for Life's first youth council, and also worked with the scholarship. So thank you all so much for being with us today. So George, I'd love to start with you. And I'd love if you could take what was just shared and bring us to the ground level and reflect on what are you hearing from students and families about the value of college?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's tough act to follow. The first panel, we had a Super Bowl ring. We had Pastor Hendricks. So, your point, some of the slides, and I knew what I wanted to talk about. Some of the slides created some emotions in me as a college president when I looked at those numbers. So what I will say is the data that you shared that talked about the income and the impact of the degree. The data is strong. The data is strong whenever we talk about what are parents talking about. But that negative message is so loud. And we need to do a better job, I believe, as educators, in really telling our story and connecting it with the people who it's going to have the most impact on. I think it is highway robbery, as well as we're creating a glass ceiling where we overgeneralize and we say that a college degree isn't for you. If we overgeneralize, sometimes we have a low income person. That is the best way for them to get out of poverty, by connecting with an institution of higher education. And so I think we have to do a better job of sharing the message. But to answer your question, yes, I think parents and families, they understand that the return on investment, it actually is at every level, whether you're low income, middle income, high income, parents and families understand that, but I really think you just need to do a better job. At Clayton State University, here's an example. The adjusted gross income of a family is less than $29,000 a year. So when the student graduates with a nursing degree, our nursing dean is here, and their first job is $60 or $70 or $80,000. They're changing their life and their family's life generations to come. So families understand, students understand. I think we have to do a better job of connecting with them and telling our story, because the data is there. We have to talk to them.
Thank you, George. So you're telling us, so students at Clayton are often coming in with adjusted incomes of under $30,000, and they're graduating making $50,000 more than their family's income.
Yes, absolutely. We have a story, but I had a student who was a dental hygiene major, and she graduated, and I shook her hand, so I saw her a year later. She was back, taking classes for her master's degree. And she said that she can pay cash for it now because she has a 6-figure job as a dental hygienist. So these are the examples and the stories that really resonate with our students and our families. So I encourage you to share.
Thanks, George. Yeah, those are life-changing stats. Sorry, I'd love to turn to you because you were really a standout student in high school. You went to a magnet school, you got top grades, you were involved in a number of clubs. And so I think a lot of people in this room would be surprised that you actually had to stop out of school for 2 years because you faced some barriers. So can you share what those challenges were and how you were able to overcome them?
Morning, y'all. It's yeah, that was not the goal. That was not the expectation.
When I graduated from North Cobb High School, I had 4.0 GPA. I was involved in a lot of AP classes. Majority of my classes were AP, honor, did off-campus work at my middle school. And somehow I was out of school for 2 years. How did that happen? So it was really two parts. The primary reason was that life continued outside college. I came from a low-income household, single mother. She was at home raising a 7-year-old, and then she had 2 students in college. So life continued while I was in school, and we always suffered with a little bit of housing insecurity, but it did reach its peak while I was in college. On the second half, when I was a senior in high school, that was also during COVID. Staying at home, not really having that counselor experience, really did affect how much I understood about college, but it also affected how much support I had. It affected how much education I had. It really changed the whole trajectory for me. So being in college in my sophomore year, my father got sick, he got a terminal illness, and then everything reached its peak with housing insecurity, finances changed, and just a lot of things. So being out of school, the challenges were definitely financial, but being away from friends and the community that I had built, I realized that isolation really does kill dreams. And so being able to then turn to resources in the community, such as the Scholarship Academy, I had my mentor here, Kaylee Emerson. She really has truly inspired me so much and just really kept me going to go back into school. My mother, as much as she was working and supporting my 7-year-old sister and my other sister, she also just encouraged me to keep trying and keep going back to school. That statistic that talked about college enrollment being high, but completion being very low, that is very true for so many of my classmates. Getting into school is very easy, especially when you have the grades, you have the statistics, you have the reports for it. But staying in school is the hard part when you come from a family that really doesn't have financial literacy. It's really hard to understand what the true cost is if you've never seen numbers like that and you've never seen or never been able to discuss that with someone. So the challenges were definitely multifaceted, but being able to rely on a community that was outside of school was definitely very helpful.
Thank you, sorry, and I'm really sorry to hear about your father. And I'm also really proud of you and really excited about the community that you were able to find and support that you were able to overcome those challenges. And now we have you back in one of Atlanta's wonderful universities. Turn to you. And hearing Zari's story really makes it clear how finances can shape the student's college journey. And on a larger scale, can you share what does the cost of college look like for many students across our region, and how does that affordability or lack thereof influence their decision to enroll or stop out?
And good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's good to be in the room with so many of our partners. At one goal to serve 1,500 students across 17 high schools in many of the districts represented here. And I just want to zoom out for a moment and that statistic about only 33% of people saying college is worth it. I will say that if you polled our 1,500 students, it would not be 33%. Students in high school and low-income students in particular, and a little bit about myself, I grew up in a low-income family well below the poverty line my entire life. And there was never a question for one moment that getting education beyond high school would be incredibly powerful for me. I didn't identify the day in my life that I achieved economic mobility. So looking back to the day that we started outreaching our parents in the exact way that my mom wanted to. I can identify the day that I got. And it wouldn't have happened without post-secondary education, and our students know that. But when students are questioning ROI, if they ever are, it's because they're questioning, do they have the money to make the investment in the first place? So questions about ROI for our students are typically about ability. So to put it in concrete terms, we do make investments in education and in higher education in the state. I want to affirm that. We have the Hope Scholarship, but we should be clear-eyed about who the Hope Scholarship is helping and not in most cases. And this is a room that's well aware of that. But only 44% of undergraduates in the USG system right now are Hope eligible. And another 40% of those students are going to lose their scholarship by the 90 credit check mark. And we work directly with students who do, in some cases, lose that scholarship. And I can tell you firsthand that it is not for lack of hard work. It is because they encountered an academic challenge And what do? We take away their financial resources, and those challenges start to compound. For students who get a full health grant and the Hope Scholarship, they are still roughly going to have a $9,000 to $12,000 unmet need gap to go to USG institutions. So when we think about the fact that 50% of families in Georgia would be in our situations, right? Employed, asset limited, income constrained. Where's the money going to come from? Well, it comes from accumulation of debt. And students have to really consider the opportunity costs. Can I do that? Is it going to be worth it? What are the risks? Those are the right questions to ask. And as a result of all of that, Georgia is second in the country for average student loan debt. That's why. And so one of the reasons that this is the case, the primary reason, and many of you are familiar with this, is that Georgia is only one of a handful of states that has no comprehensive need-based aid programs. Only one of a handful of states that does not have any comprehensive need-based aid, state need-based aid programs. So when a student is coming from a low-income background, truly the financial resources to help them attain that education are quite limited. We have made a policy choice in this state about the students we're investing in or not. I do want to share some good news, and it's timely, and I'm going to have a call to action for this room. But just yesterday was the culmination of a 4-month state Senate study committee on college affordability. And I want to shout out our colleagues who have been working on an organization called Georgians for College Affordability. That bipartisan Senate study committee of very veteran state senators has voted to support the creation of a state-based aid program. Now we have a long way to go. We have to have the legislation, we have to have the fiscal backing, but truly my call to action for each of you in this room as educators, but as private citizens, is you need to get on the phone with your elected officials this coming legislative session and talk about the fact that we need to make good on this aid program. And get fired up about what it would mean for individual students, but for our communities at large. And that was a lot to answer your question. But sorry.
No, thank you, Tyler. What I hear is that what we heard on the literacy panel was that showing up matters. And so for getting kids across that post-secondary finish line, we also need to show up for that. It does not just stop at the start of the pencil chart. It goes all the way through. That's why it's a continuum. And so thank you so much for sharing all of that. For lower income students, I'm just hearing like this is life changing. It moves them, and it's not a question of whether they think it's worth it, it's whether or not they can actually afford it. So, George, we know that persistence in college isn't just about finances. Taylor just alluded to a little bit of the academic challenges. So, I'd love to hear from you what skills or experiences have you seen make the biggest difference for students? And helping them be able to stay and finish.
Really wish we could take money off the table, but we can't. But that being said, I think Taylor did an excellent job of identifying how money and income can have an impact on students persisting. One example that I'll give you, normally every semester, maybe 4 or 5 weeks in, there's a time when students have to make sure their bill is all paid up. We have several students who can't stay in school for $300-400. Might be something that you spend on a nice dinner. We have students who can't persist, so I can't ignore that. So we have to acknowledge that. Other things that I believe help our students, I should say, I know that help our students persist. Some of them are pretty specific. It is quality and good academic advisement. It is students being engaged, being in a club, group, or organization can make a difference in person feeling like they belong to the institution and they connect with somebody. Playing on an athletic team gives you an incentive to work harder to get the grades because you have to depend on one another to play so that you can compete. I mean, it's those things are relatively simple, but those are things that really do connect students and help them persist. One thing I do want to mention is, and it's a little bit more complex, would be self-advocacy. And it's as simple as raising your hand and asking the professor a question, or asking them to meet with them after class. The professors are intimidated if you're a first generation student. No one in your extended family has been to college, and so you're asking Dr. So-and-so, I don't understand what you said that entire class. Can you help me out? And it's a skill that if you don't have that because you don't have the social capital because your parents haven't interacted with you in a way that you understand how to make that connection, it is programs like One Goal and Achieve Atlanta. I'm going to get in trouble if I don't identify all of them, but all of the programs that actually work with our students to give them the confidence to have those interactions and those discussions. So I think that is very important to student persistence as they first graduates. So pretty simple things, but they become more complex when you consider the student that has to have that interaction with the faculty member or the professor or the administrator. Okay.
Ensuring that they have motivations beyond academics and also that they have that self-advocacy. And sorry, I would say that's one of your top skills. You're definitely advocating for yourself. Watching you is amazing. And so would love to hear, like you've shared with me before, that even though finances are important in college, that your experience is about a lot more than that. And so could you just quickly share with us what has made it most meaningful for you?
Absolutely. So being in college, the intention is, of course, education, especially being in nursing school, understanding medical terminology, having the skills is absolutely important and pivotal in my career. But the second half of that is being able to really engage with the university like Emory that has so many different connections and opportunities has also made the most difference in my career experience at college. In school, I've already been able to get my passport. I have a study abroad in Mexico over summer that's fully paid. I've been able to volunteer opportunities that have really grown my ability and capacity to want to volunteer and be connected to my community. I've met so many different people from salsa classes, from dancing. I mean, they really do make sure that students have a well-rounded experience, and that's not just Africa, that's so many schools. And during my time in the Scholarship Academy, I was able to share that with students. As much as education is very important, the experiences that you're having, I was even able to meet my mentor through an event through the Alumni Association at Emory, and she really sustained me during my years away from school. But without school, I wouldn't have been able to talk to her. She wouldn't have been able to tell me. It's really full circle. So school has really enabled me to have that self-advocacy and being able to speak up for myself. It's a very different environment than where I'm used to, where I'm from. So it took some time to adjust to, but having faculty, having staff, having admin who was really there to pour into me, speak kind words over me, really encourage me to stand up for myself and say the things that I need to say, ask questions. It's really changed so much because I've been able to be so involved on campus and take those skills with me.
Thank you. Yeah, so you're very well rounded. You had access to a mentor. Taylor, we've been talking a lot about the value of college. I'm going to challenge you to answer this quickly. I want to get to say this, but we know that you formally partner with several different institutions, like Clayton State, and that you recently launched a partnership with Atlanta Technical College. Can you share why offering different post-sec pathways is important for students?
Yes, and I will say, this question of ROI in college, a lot of times it becomes a lot of adult conversations, a debate about which pathways are better than others, if we should be on what pathways, et cetera. We should ask those questions. But at the end of the day, if we listen to students, they need someone to help them identify their passions and interests, and then what pathway is best going to support them to get there. And so it is a variety of pathways. I saw Dr. Seals here earlier, but we partner with Clayton State and so many other institutions in this room, and ATC and our technical college system is a very important partner. And we've had really earnest conversations that supporting 18 and 19-year-olds, so students right out of high school, does take a different kind of support than adults who might be further along in their career and are going to be looking at upskilling or reskilling. So it's a really important partnership alongside Achieve Atlanta and others to make sure that we're just doing our darndest to support students to that.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, so we have to recognize, I think Ken alluded it to first, we have to know who we're serving in order to provide the supports they need. All right. Final question for you, Zari. In one sentence, can you tell the folks here in this room what can schools and community leaders do better or differently to support students on their post-secondary journeys?
What you said, just show up.
Wonderful, love it. Just show me. And similar question for George and Taylor. In one sentence, what is the next move that Metro Atlanta needs to make in order to get kids across that finish line? George, you go ahead.
Most of the students we're talking about today attend institutions like Clayton State, Atlanta Technical College, Atlanta Metropolitan State College. I encourage you to partner and support those institutions.
I'm going to be disciplined in my message today. Let's support high schools to continue to invest in making sure that students have the support they need for that post-secondary transition. And let's put our money where our mouth is. Stop making it so difficult for working students to get through college. Let's do this.
Is everyone taking note of your different calls to action and you made a list, right? Good. So Rebecca and I have taken you from one end of the pencil chart to the other, and this next segment is really important for achieving any of those 6 and 12 Ps. And that's really focusing on enhancing student engagement. And so challenges with student engagement, I know that there are more than 3 factors, but given our time in Learn for Lifestyle, we're just going to zone into 3 major contributing factors today, including chronic absenteeism, student safety and well-being, and teacher burnout. So looking at chronic absenteeism, which is defined as missing more than 10% of instructional days, we've seen this number on the rise since the pandemic. And while like a quarter of students say, it's not a big deal, what they're missing is that they're missing key instructional time, connections with their peers, and also connections with their teachers in order to help bring them along and feel connected to their school community. So that can further actually disengage them from participating. Then when we look inside the building about how are students feeling, we can look at the Georgia Climate and Culture Survey, which tells us that students don't always feel safe or respected when they're at school. And what we know is that students' mental health and a sense of well-being and safety is crucial for them to be able to succeed academically, because it's really hard to focus on what your teacher is saying, even if you're in the building. If you're worried about your physical safety, think about your hierarchy of needs. Which one's going to come first? And honestly, we have to talk about teachers when we talk about student engagement. Teachers have 2 to 3 times the impact of any other in-school factor on students' academic success. So they're huge, it's crucial for their success. But we know that teachers are experiencing burnout at high levels. And what that means for actually their day-to-day work and how that trickles down to students is that when they're feeling those senses of burnout, they aren't able to employ the effective strategies that they know as effectively. And so teachers with higher stress, they don't use things like good classroom management. They struggle to give clear instruction. And also, it's hard to build that engaging climate when they don't feel that themselves. All right, so we've just scratched the surface on some of these, but I'm going to invite our panelists up because they're going to be able to shed some light on how we can increase student engagement and also why it matters for our long-term success. So I invite our panelists to make their way up to the stage. And so I want to introduce Taylor Hall, who is a John Gardner Fellow at Learn for Life, where she leads the Youth Council and supports the Post-Secondary Change Action Network. Dr. Marcia Francis, Executive Director of Student Trust. She's a nationally recognized equity champion in more than 15 years, advancing high-quality STEM learning in Title I schools. And also Felipe Jackson, principal of Hamilton Homes Elementary School. Felipe, he's dynamic. He also was a part of the first retained cohort, and he's known for his charisma, his wisdom, and belief that schools anchor strong communities. I'm also really excited to have Dr. Gina Whitaker with us today, who's going to moderate the panel. She's the superintendent of City Schools of Decatur. She's a visionary leader with more than 2 decades here driving academic excellence and equity. So really happy to have you moderating this really dynamic panel, Gina. But first, I'd love to invite you to just share a few thoughts on the data that we just shared, and also what can districts do to access more student voice? And I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to Ken and all of the leadership of Learn for Life. I have had over 25 years here serving in the Atlanta metro area. The role of a 4th grade classroom teacher to the role of a superintendent in the metro, serving the metro. So when I look across this room, I have walked classrooms with many of you. I've been the supervisor of those on the panel. We have coordinated the way we would support teachers and always working towards lifting the voices of our young. So in the City Schools of Decatur, we have been visionary around amplifying student voice through our new strategic plan, All in Decatur. Well, it's not as new anymore. It's been around for about 2.5 years. But in our strategic plan, our first pillar is one that we would have student success in all areas. So we heard from our first panel today. That first panel talked about literacy. And yes, that was the #1 focus when I walked in the door. And yes, City Schools of Decatur is thriving in the area of literacy now since being there. But the second pillar of our strategic plan is how do we build and sustain an engaging and inclusive culture for students. The #1 objective there is amplifying student voice. So yes, we want all of our students to be successful. We want those outcomes. We want the pencil chart to actually increase. But if the students aren't there, it won't. So the way we are amplifying student voice, the first thing we did was work to put on our Board of Education a student representative, not an advisor, but an elected student representative. So Nia Batra, please stand. So Nia actually was elected 2 years ago. So she was in the role of apprentice for a year. And the first actual student who served as a student representative is now a freshman at Georgia Tech. So I say that now she is in this role. It is how you begin to bring the voice and amplify the voice of students. So many of my fellow superintendents are at our Georgia School Board Association conference. So our student representative attends the conference just like our regular board members. She sits on the dais, she attends the retreats, she attends the training. She's not in executive session, nor is she a voting member, but she does amplify the student voice in each and every matter. And so that is how City Schools of Decatur is really thinking about that true amplification of student voice. And is one that we've written into policy, regulation, and we're looking forward to amplifying it at a greater level in our legislature this upcoming season. But I will say that there is one other pillar of our strategic plan that speaks to a lot of what we saw today. And student success in all areas, ensuring you have an engaging and inclusive culture for students. That's a joint effort between teachers and students. But then the third pillar is how do we not only retain, but cultivate high quality professionals. We saw that burnout statistics. And yes, in the state of Georgia, we have had great documents produced in the pandemic around burnout here in the state on what the factors are. But we are working tremendously, one, around compensation. We have to professionalize the actual field of education, and teachers are professionals, and they must be compensated. They are the key to the next generation. Additionally, having phenomenal programming for all of our students and for our teachers for their professional learning, utilizing things like as the campus and other ways are key. But the way you're going to address that burden is to make sure that we as system leaders are listening to teachers. And we are also listening to students. And so I'm excited about this panel today because I've had the opportunity, I think someone called it a Fulton reunion panel. That's what they told me when I walked in today, because Dr. Elisha Francis has been such a phenomenal partner over the years in various places, as well as Taylor, who I've gotten to know over this past year, as she is now here at Love for Life. And then Felipe Jackson, to watch him grow and lead over the years. I'm excited about today. So, Felipe, I want to start with you. Reflect on what you're seeing in your school and what student engagement really looks like.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for allowing me to participate. And to answer your question, it looks like this. For the students and their parents, I would believe that you come as you are, but you're not. A lot of times, well, I've had the privilege and the honor to work in schools in low poverty areas, mostly the most challenging schools. I did a rush change schools, cultivating culture. So when parents may come and students come with certain baggage, leave it at the door and watch the finished product at the end of the day. Or better yet, watch the finished product at the end of the year. When we have students who, well, we do that by empowering students. Students run the school, making sure that there's activities for students after school, during school, and also reminding students, well, I will say this, instilling self-efficacy in our students every single day. With the adults, I charge them to treat every child as your child. I challenge those adults and I'll remind them that we're here to fix the same reason why you want to live in this community. Meaning, when we come into this community, we have to give them something. So we create this attitude and mindset of service and being consistent and being fair and being honest. And so what does that lead to? Integrity. Creating a culture where adults can govern themselves and understanding that the number one priority is students.
I love that. The number one priority is students. And I can say, as a testament, the way you have worked with communities, families, children, to look them in the eyes and see beyond what you see is phenomenal. So thank you for your service and your leadership. And to Taylor, so Taylor, first of all, Taylor, tell us where you recently graduated from and what you do here at Mount Pride.
Yes, I recently graduated from Stanford University in undergrad this past year. The Don Gardner Fellow, and I'm leading their youth council. And so the Don Gardner Fellowship supports recent grads from Stanford to work at nonprofits or local agencies.
I love it. I love it. So when you talk about amplifying student voice, someone who not only works with the students, but most recently has been in their shoes in comparison to us. So, and I'm talking about us, young people. So, from your work with the Youth Council as a recent college graduate, what do students say makes them want to actually go to school? Or on the flip side, what makes them not, which is to disengage?
Thank you for that question. I want to start with a conversation that we had within Youth Council where we asked students what were their most engaging and disengaging experiences in math classes. And the number one thing that students said kept them most engaged was being in a class with a safe and trusted adults. So someone who was passionate about what they were teaching, someone who allowed the students to be vulnerable and as well, and someone who cared about the students' well-being beyond their performance. And that's honestly been the same experience for me as well. And now on the flip side, when I think about some of my most disengaging experiences in school, it's been when I've been in a classroom where I felt unsafe and insignificant. And one of those experiences happened to me when I was a senior in high school. I took statistics. And on my second to last day of high school, second to last day of class for statistics, I was threatened to be suspended because I was not engaged in class. We had just had a college field day. I was excited, and despite all of the amazing acceptances and scholarships that I was offered, I had a teacher who was willing to throw that all away because I wasn't acting the way that she thought that I should have been in that moment. And up until that point, I really hadn't felt like I learned anything in class, and it made me realize that students can't learn in classes where they feel attacked. And I experienced a similar version of this attack once I got to college. So with college for me, it felt like my life was constantly revolved around work. I felt like a lot of my professors cared about my performance more than they cared about me. I had some amazing professors, but that was definitely the general sentiment. And from that experience, I felt like I was missing sleep. I felt like I was missing out on experiences with my family and friends. And overall, it just made college feel very suffocating within my first 2 years. Now, to combat this, I did take a step away from Stanford, and I participated in the Stanford Teacher Student Exchange Program, where I was able to attend small college for a year. Which allowed me that I needed in that experience. And it made me realize that students don't disengage even here. They disengage when you don't feel like people are caring about them as an entire team. And students have so many mental health challenges that they experience in college and in high school, and it's super important that we are acknowledging that. And it brings me back to the youth council again, to make me realize that, again, it's super important for us to acknowledge the whole child, that to trust us as much as we trust them as well.
I love that. So, a trusted adult. That is a phrase that we hear so often in education, that you must have an adult that the student trusts. Now, there are many adults in this room, and what I would want all of you to know is that your engagement with children helps them to find that trusted adult. So yes, obviously, we want that trusted adult to be in that classroom with them. But all of us, I want to charge all of us as adults to be a trusted adult for a student. Because the community is how we're going to really make a difference in the lives of our students. So I'm so glad that you were able to navigate that post-secondary experience to find what you needed so that you can be here today and be as successful as you are. So awesome, awesome. So Marsha, so it's so good to see you. And the question for you is, how do you measure engagement in your programs? And what signs tell you that the students are truly invested in what's happening where they are listed?
For that question. Thanks for that question. I'm the executive director of Steam Truck. We've been around Metro Atlanta and now rural Georgia. Since 2013, we've been engaging kids. Think about home ec, shop class, and computer science rolled together. You're doing, you're thinking, you're building, you're problem solving. So Steam Truck was founded on that initiative, thinking about how do kids learn. Kids don't learn by sitting, they learn by putting their hands on things. And so as we've spent more than a decade across Metro Atlanta, we've thought about how are kids building. Is there a problem that they can consider and then build a solution for? Engagement looks so different when tools are in front of kids. When kids put their hands on tools. So we're talking about third graders using a drill. We're talking about fifth graders measuring PVC pipes and creating a 5-foot tall geodesic dome. We're talking about our seventh graders coding a roadmap for college tours and saying, hey, this is how I would make this robot go from here to here to here to here to check out the colleges I might want to explore after 12th grade. Engagement looks like smiles. Engagement looks like loud. Engagement looks like maybe a little bit messy at times. But engagement is very much embodied. It is not your traditional sit in a seat, raise your hand, read a book, write a paper. Engagement is joy, it's energy, it's hands-on, it's minds-on. And it's when you see that, you can see it. You walk in the room, you walk in a group, you see kids doing a thing. When I first met Steam Truck, I was professor at Spelman College, and I'm also an alum of Spelman College. But I was teaching our math and science methods for elementary teachers. And we were in the class and we were talking about, hey, what happens when elementary students learn math and science? What should it look like? And after that class, I walked outside and I see this truck with tables and tents and tools, and I saw kids thinking. I saw kids building. I saw, this is back in 2014 when I met the board, 2015, and it was about a year old. Said, hey, I see kids thinking. When I was talking to these future teachers about, we saw kids doing, thinking, engaged. And I've been hooked on our model ever since. So it's really exciting to leave that the past 4 years and bring teachers into that type of joy, energy, and engagement to speak to the burnout that might often impact student engagement.
I love that. So in your answer, you spoke to probably the largest part of my career, which is teaching and learning, where you really understand what's happening in the classroom and how the adults influence that to make sure the learning is active. But it's something that teachers need support in learning to do and to do well. But that's how you hope to ensure the students are engaged. And then the comes to come. They do. All right. But a safe environment is key as well. Felipe. It is so important that students feel safe, and that safety can be physical safety as well as psychological safety. And so, how do you balance the safety policies also with maintaining student trust and engagement? And I laugh about that just because I heard some teachers go off twice since we've been in this room. And for many of us, that's the panic alert system. This legislation, there are so many things that are really driving what's happening in schools from a safety perspective. So as a building leader, how do you balance safety policies but still maintaining that engagement and trust with the students?
Prayer. Well, first and foremost, we identify the most important. When you have the right individuals understanding what those policies are. That's happening now. The next is educating the adults on these policies. With teachers, we can take from the safety plan, the importance of following the safety plan, to the code of conduct. What the code of conduct says, so that way they need to understand you can't suspend a child, right? And so with parents, educate them on the why. Why do we have these policies and these plans in place for the betterment and the safety of your child? And then once we're able to do that, we can then shift to what does that look like? Well, create alternatives to suspension. If we're talking about incidents, we're dealing with this. Also reminding the staff that if we're working in certain environments, we have a community, we work in a community where there's a lack of trust with authority. It's our job to be able to break down those barriers. What does that look like? You have to be innovative, think outside the box, be non-traditional. For me, I always want to be a safety patrol. I always want to be a safety patrol. But there's a reason why I was a safety patrol, right? So if I have a group of challenging students, and this is just an example, those challenging students become my safety patrols. Now I just empower students. One, challenging students are too tough students, so the kids want to listen to them. But what I'm doing is I'm using that influence in a positive way. Two, with the adults, I have to model what does that look like? What does positive communication look like? What does it flexible look like? What does a second or third chance look like? Right? You have allowing adults to see that there's other ways to go about this work versus beating students down and parents down with policy. And then with policy, reaching out to see what I can do and what I can't do. I'll go to the line but won't cross the line. And then also having an open door policy so that way parents can see the practices and the plans in place at work, so that way they can actually see that this is a school that's safe. And also get responsive, because we know if a parent, superintendents, and very folks, you get thousands and thousands of emails, but being responsive to those emails and those concerns, whether it's little to something that's major, so that way parents can see it. And then once they see it, then they start to believe it. And then guess what? Now we are cultivating a culture where it's a safe environment that's conducive to learning, and it's kid friendly, it's parent friendly. Just because we live in this area, quote unquote, that has the statement doesn't mean that the school has to reflect that, right? Because eventually we're going to change that because we're changing our mindset.
Thank you. So the opportunity that I think we've heard around student engagement is that it takes a village. It truly takes the entire community. We have to think about it from a leadership perspective. We have to think about it from a community perspective, from a school perspective. So in one sentence, to Marsha and to Taylor, my question would be, what role can the community play to engage students, to amplify their voice so that they can be safe and engaged here in schools?
So, I would say treating students as partners and as decision makers, not just an audience. So letting them decide where the money goes, what's in the curriculum, and just overall empowering them to make decisions.
Awesome.
And I'd say kudos to that, thinking about including that student voice. There are times that we've designed things. That's not a sentence. But their youth advisory council, we started advisory council after engaging with them over the summer. So ensuring that voices are included, not just doing to kids, doing with kids in formative basis.
I love that. I love that. So I want to thank you all for being on the panel today. And I want to encourage the community to be involved with our students by listening to them and amplifying their voice through the work that you do every day.
Thank you to the farmhouse. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Felipe. We are at the end of this journey that we've had together today. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your wisdom and for your leadership each and every day. And one round of applause for all of our panelists. I do want to recognize that there's other folks who have exhibited vision. We didn't get a chance to recognize earlier some of our elected school board officials. I saw Trey from is Trey still Trey's still here. There's Trey Hutchins from Park County. Jessica Johnson from Atlanta Public Schools. And most recently, Casey Bride as of $12. You're doing a great job, Casey. You're nice. We're coming in. We're coming in. So as you know, we have a flair for stagecraft here at Wordflog. So you're going to get a treat as we leave in just a minute. So stick around for our student poet. But our commitment to you all at Learn for Life is that we're going to continue to do this work. We're going to continue to find bright spots. It is out there. We are an asset-based organization, and we need to focus on what our community can do for our kids. There are great things happening for our kids. We just need to continue to tell that message. And then scale with the help of our leadership council to ultimately go to work on football Atlanta. And as Katie mentioned when we started, we can't do this without the support of folks in this room and on the side. And if you look at that slide and say, wow, how do I get on that slide? We can make room. And we have that ability, we have that PowerPoint skills. Come see us afterwards because this is the goal kid slide. And we need your support. It does not happen by accident. And speaking of it not happening by accident, I want a round of applause for I really the round of being all the way by far the nicest person in the Wordflog ecosystem. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we were thank you too. So thanks to this team, really, none of this stuff. Look how small this team is. And we're able to punch above our weight because of their hard work and your commitment to sharing this effort with us. So, out the door. Wow. So let me call up Jalen. There you are, Jalen. As Jalen comes up, Jalen is a 2025 Atlanta Youth Poet Laureate ambassador. He is a junior who brings that same determination that fuels his academic and extracurricular life to the stage days. He shares his poem. We couldn't think of a better way to end our conversation.
So much. I am the city that burned and still built bridges. The city that learned to rise brighter than its ruins. Don't let me fall again. Not when you know how to fly, not when wings are waiting for your courage. You know enough to sense community going up in smoke, but you also know that embers can kindle new beginnings. Know that the amount of dreams grinded between bodies is alarming, but also know that dreams are seeds and seeds push through concrete. Too many people went to homecoming and never came home. But the home we build now can welcome generations. When I said stay close to your roots, I didn't mean 6 feet under. I meant stretch upward, let your branches find light. I meant to lift as you climb up my concrete body to eternity. And my calling might have made you sniffle, but it doesn't meet the emotional congestion dreams of bird has caused still. Flowers bloom despite the storm, still there is breath and beauty and becoming. For me, I remind you that I'm your mother, that I granted certain parts of myself so that you too didn't get similar circular birthmarks. By forming rings of fiery community centered around your rosy cheeks and breathtaking eyes, needless to say, I love you. And needless to say, my love is proof of your power. But alas, ashes, without access, you all fall down, yet with access, you survive, you thrive, you transform. Access to hugging trees over pavement, to knowing that I am the concrete jungle, but also a garden you can grow. Access to well-paying jobs and hiring local, access to affordable and reliable transportation, access to joy and safety and belonging. I raised you so you can raise me high into the sky. I raised you to be fly. Don't ground yourself with chains because what's the point of drip if it only trickles down? But it can flow outward, upward, everywhere. Needless to say, one person can't push that metaphor forward. It takes a plan that encompasses the structure of the north side, the creativity of the east side, the charisma of the west side, and the culture of the south. For together, we can avoid the flames of my past and present and set course for an overwhelmingly positive presence. A skyline remade in resilience, a horizon radiant with hope.
You can see why we end with Jalen. One powerful message of hope as you walk out the door today. Let's take that hope with us as we wake up and serve kids each and every day. Thank you, everybody. Same thing with work line information there. Talk to our bright spots that are out in the hallway. Have a great day, everybody.